1. The Old Testament was already translated into Greek. Before Christianity, Jewish scholars translated the Hebrew scriptures into Greek. This translation became known as the Septuagint, traditionally associated with the 3rd to 2nd centuries BC. This is important because the early Christians often used the Greek Septuagint when quoting the Old Testament. 2. Early Christians began translating scripture into Latin. As Christianity spread into the Latin-speaking Western Roman Empire, Christians needed scripture in Latin. There wasn't initially yet one official Latin Bible. 3. The most important figure in the Latin Bible's development was Saint Jerome. Around 382, Pope Damasus I asked Jerome to revise the existing Latin translations of the Gospels. His work gradually became known as the Vulgate, from the Latin Vulgata, meaning something like common or widely circulated. Jerome worked on the biblical texts over several decades, beginning in the late 4th century and continuing into the early 5th century. His translation or revision of the Old Testament was substantially completed by about 405. Over the following centuries, Jerome's work circulated alongside older Latin translations and underwent additional copying and editing. Eventually, the Vulgate became the standard Latin Bible of the Western Church. The Vulgate became so influential that the Council of Trent declared the Vulgate the authentic edition of the Bible for use in the Latin Church, particularly in matters of faith and doctrine. However, this did not mean that Catholics believed the Latin Vulgate was the original language of Scripture. The original Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek texts remained fundamental for biblical scholarship. The word Vulgate does not mean original Bible. It means common or popular. Jerome's goal was essentially to provide Christians in the Latin-speaking world with a scripture text they could understand and use while improving the accuracy of the existing Latin translations. So in a nutshell, the Bible began primarily in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. It was gradually translated into Latin, and St. Jerome's work in the late 4th and early 5th centuries became the foundation of what we know as the Latin Vulgate.